The hangar was sealed. The Queen's jet hadn't moved since her funeral. RAF Northolt. Private Royal Aircraft. Legacy locked. Off limits. Until this morning. Camilla's team showed up with papers. Her son was getting the aircraft. And when the Royal Guard tried to block them, she came in person. Said it was just a plane. Said it had no purpose anymore. Said to step aside. This aircraft belongs to us now. But Sergeant Rourke called her bluff. And when she pushed again, he called the one person who still remembered what the Queen left behind. Now, before we show you what Prince William did when he stepped onto the tarmac, why he opened the cockpit himself, and what the Queen's final letter actually said, make sure you're subscribed with the bell icon turned on. Drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from, and stay right here because this wasn't about a jet. It was about the one flight no one was allowed to touch. RAF Northolt never slept, but some parts of it had learned to whisper. Even at 6:30 in the morning, most of the base was coated in that blue-grey mist that made everything look softer than it was. The kind that muffled jet engines and turned voices into ghosts. Sergeant Eli Rourke liked it that way. Quiet meant control. Quiet meant nothing was out of place. He was finishing his perimeter check when he saw the light. Just a flicker at first. Fluorescent white, cutting through the fog from inside Hangar 4. He paused mid-step, tea flask still tucked under one arm, and squinted across the tarmac. That hangar hadn't been opened since the funeral. Over a year now, locked, logged, and left alone. Then a second light came on, then a third, and then he heard it. The hydraulic hiss of something heavy being lowered off a maintenance stand. Eli set the flask down on the observation shack ledge and started walking. Hangar 4 held one thing. The BAE-146, the Queen's jet. The one that had flown her across 1.6 million miles of airspace, Nairobi rainstorms, NATO airstrips in Germany, Highland fog so thick you could taste it. It had been sealed after her passing. Tagged "Do Not Reassign" in both the official registry and the quieter, heavier kind of order that doesn't get written down, but everyone remembers anyway. No flights, no touch-ups, no ceremonial anything, just stillness. But now the outer door was wide open, and two men in fluorescent vests were crawling under the fuselage with flashlights. Eli stepped inside without hurry. His boots echoed once against the concrete, then fell silent on the rubber matting near the work bay. The contractors didn't notice him at first. One had a torch clamped between his teeth. The other was scribbling something on a clipboard, humming under his breath like he was checking a grocery list. "Excuse me," Eli said. Both men jumped slightly. The one with the torch pulled it from his mouth and blinked at him like a kid caught stealing biscuits. "We're with the reassignment team," the man said quickly. "Just doing initial assessments before transport." Eli's face didn't change. "Under whose authority?" The clipboard came up, flipped. "Private VIP conversion. Signed off last week. It's being reassigned for restoration." Eli took the clipboard, scanned it. His eyes caught one line near the bottom. "Recipient, Mr. Thomas Parker Bowles." His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed flat. "Who opened the aircraft?" The man shrugged. "Ramp was already unlocked when we got here. Keys were with the valet. We figured you'd been briefed." "I wasn't." He handed the clipboard back and walked past them without another word. Climbed the open stairway into the jet. It smelled the same. Leather. Old pressurized air. Something faintly floral underneath. Lavender, maybe, mixed with aviation fuel. The cockpit lights were on. The control panel had been powered up. The logbook drawer was cracked open like someone had been rifling through it. Eli walked further in. The Queen's seat, starboard side, third row back, still had the indent where she'd sat thousands of times. The armrest worn smooth on one side, where her hand had rested during turbulence. He'd seen photos of her there, reading dispatches, writing notes in careful longhand, never using a laptop. Always paper. He glanced toward the rear galley. A teacup sat in the drying rack, bone china, gold rim. It hadn't been there during the last inventory check. Someone had used the galley recently. He stepped closer and touched the edge of the sink. still damp. They'd been preparing the jet, not just inspecting it, living in it, testing systems, making it theirs before it was even officially theirs. No one had flown this plane in over a year, not since Balmoral, not since Princess Anne and Prince William quietly grounded it as a legacy hold, not ceremonial, not retired, just protected. Eli stood there for a moment, one hand resting on the back of the pilot's seat. Then he turned, walked back down the ramp, and stopped beside the fuselage, placed his palm flat against the hull, exhaled once. They weren't reassigning a jet, they were rewriting her, and he wasn't going to let it happen. By 7, Eli was inside the Air Operations Wing, logged into Terminal B7. His ID badge flashed amber as the system loaded. He didn't rush, never did, just waited as line after line of text appeared on the screen. Asset code XJ-4/B AE146. Queen Transit. Status static hold. Legacy protected. Category Class B Memorial Transport. Grounded indefinitely. Commanding Authority Royal Seal. Dual Entry AW/WC. AW was Anne Windsor. WC William of Cambridge. Eli scanned the log carefully. Not the headlines, the margins, the timestamps, the places where people think no one's looking. Then he saw it. One new line appended at 3:47 the night before. Reassignment approved. VIP private use. Signatory QC Office of Queen Consort. Recipient Mr. T.P. Bowles. Purpose personal air mobility. Restoration planned. Retrofitting cleared. And at the very bottom, greyed out like someone hoped it would blend in. Manifest backdated. Cleared. 8 days prior. Logged entry edited. Eli's right eyelid twitched. Just once. It was the only tell he had. Backdating a manifest wasn't sloppiness. It was concealment. Used when you wanted a paper trail, but also wanted it to look older than the suspicion it would raise. He clicked deeper. The system wouldn't let him open the source file. Locked under royal override. Camilla's office. Of course, everyone had known this might happen. The whispers started even before the funeral, about Camilla's push to streamline legacy assets, consolidate things that no longer served modern function. Most of the family stayed quiet, but William hadn't. Eli remembered a line from the Prince months ago, standing beside this very jet during a quiet inspection. It stays grounded. She chose this one. Not for ceremony, for service. And that deserves silence now. But silence, it seemed, didn't last long under certain hands. Eli opened the internal comms log and typed carefully. To Northolt Ops Base. From Rourke, Sergeant E. Request hold. Asset XJ4. Reason. Verification discrepancy. Status unknown. Initiating pause. Duration requested. 24-hour temporary lockdown. The reply came back in under a minute. Hold requires sovereign override or direct air intervention. Cannot authorize unilaterally. He stared at it, read it twice, then closed the terminal slowly, because now he knew two things. First, Camilla's team had used the Queen's own airfield to quietly move her legacy out the back door. Second, the only person who could stop it hadn't been told, but Eli wasn't planning to wait for permission. The growl of civilian tires on military tarmac sounded wrong. Eli heard them before he saw them. 2 identical SUVs in glossy graphite, followed by a low loader with an empty platform. They slowed as they reached Hangar 4 and turned in with the sluggish confidence of people who expected doors to open on command. They didn't. Eli was already standing at the threshold when the lead SUV door opened and Thomas Parker Bowles stepped out. Designer boots, overcoat with the cuffs rolled just so, silk scarf draped like he'd just walked off a yacht. He stretched his arms and looked toward the hangar, like he was admiring a new car he'd just bought. "Well," he said, shielding his eyes, "still here. I was half expecting Anne's conservation brigade to have flown it off to some museum by now." Eli said nothing. Thomas spotted him and grinned. "Sergeant Rourke, isn't it? We met at Windsor. Or was it Sandringham? You were standing by the dining car like a piece of furniture. He didn't wait for a reply. Another man stepped out behind him. Clipboard, Bluetooth earpiece. The look of someone who moved private jets for a living. Behind them, two men in coveralls approached the hangar's lift ramp, already assessing the loading angle. Thomas gestured toward the jet. Still got charm, hasn't it? Bit dusty, but nothing a retrofit can't fix. Interior's dated as hell. We'll gut it. Maybe turn the Queen's seat into a bar nook. She'd probably find that amusing. He pulled out his phone, scrolling casually. Already got the designer lined up. Marble countertops, mood lighting, maybe some of that smart glass that tints on command. Proper VIP treatment. The old girl flew dignitaries for decades. Might as well give her a second life, flying them in style, yeah? One of the coverall men chuckled. Thomas grinned wider. Media's going to love it. Royal legacy meets modern luxury. Heritage restored. Everyone wins. Eli's voice was quiet. There's no approved release. Thomas looked up from his phone, blinking like he'd forgotten Eli was there. Sorry? No release authorization. Not from the acting command. Thomas waved a folded envelope in the air. Mum's already signed off. Everything's cleared. We're just here to collect. Eli didn't move. This aircraft is logged as a sealed memorial asset under directive of the Royal Air. And overridden by the Queen Consort, Thomas said smoothly. Chain of command and all that. I'm not here to argue policy. I'm here to make use of an underused piece of machinery. He moved toward the stairs. Eli stepped in front of him. Thomas stopped mid-stride, blinking, like the idea of being physically blocked was so foreign it hadn't occurred to him it could happen. Step aside, he said quietly. You're the guard. Not the pilot, not the family, not the future. Eli's voice didn't change. Then wait until someone who outranks you tells me to. For a moment the hangar went still. Thomas stared at him like he was sizing up a table that wouldn't quite move where he wanted it. Then he turned toward the clipboard man and snapped, Get the ramp ready. We're not staying here all morning. But the men hesitated, because Eli hadn't moved. And somehow, despite the silence, he'd already taken command of the room. The air shifted before she appeared, not in sound, not in movement, just in the way everyone's attention turned without being told. Footsteps echoed off the aluminum siding, slow, purposeful. Then came the shadow through the doorway. Camilla. No aides, no handlers, just her, walking in with the kind of slow composure reserved for women who'd spent decades learning to command a room without raising their voice. Dark overcoat, velvet trim, hair pinned perfectly, heels clicking just softly enough to make the silence feel earned. A single brooch at her collar, gold, shaped like an eagle's wing. Her gaze swept once over the jet, once over Thomas, then settled on Sergeant Eli Rourke. You must be Sergeant Rourke, she said, with a smile that wasn't one. We've heard you're rather thorough. Eli inclined his head. Ma'am. She walked further in, not looking at the jet again. I admire your formality. I do. The Queen would have liked that, but we've moved on from sentimental obstruction, haven't we? Eli didn't answer. Camilla continued, voice smooth as glass. The jet is no longer required for ceremonial functions. It has value elsewhere. My son intends to restore it, not destroy it, mind you, but put it back into use. Breathe new life into a relic collecting dust. Eli's eyes didn't move. It was grounded by directive of the Queen's heir. She waved a gloved hand. And I've issued a revision on His Majesty's behalf. Charles is aware. Everything's documented. Even William's silence, I presume, is consent, since he's been entirely unavailable this past week. She turned to Thomas, then to the ramp crew. Go ahead. Thomas smirked and gestured to the lift platform. Eli stepped forward again. You may have signed a paper, ma'am. But that aircraft isn't just equipment. It's a legacy hold. Memorial class. The Queen's last command flight. It was sealed for a reason. Camilla tilted her head. I was there when she flew it last. And I'm here now. Let's not pretend service trumps sovereignty. It does, Eli said, when memory is the thing being served. Her tone sharpened. You are a ceremonial guard, Sergeant. Not a historian, not a curator of sentiment. I'm the line between remembrance and removal. Camilla's smile thinned. And who taught you that line? William? Anne? She took a step closer, voice dropping to something almost conversational. Let me tell you what this really is, Sergeant. It's nostalgia dressed up as duty. The Queen moved on from things constantly. She wasn't sentimental about objects. She was practical. And right now you're treating a 40-year-old aircraft like it's the crown jewels. It carried her for 33 years, Eli said quietly. That's longer than some marriages. Camilla's jaw tightened. Poetic, but irrelevant. Is it? Eli asked. Because the flight log says otherwise. She chose this jet over every other option in the fleet, even when they offered newer models, even when the engines needed constant maintenance. She kept it, and when she stopped flying, she didn't retire it. She sealed it. Camilla's eyes flashed. Because Anne convinced her to. Because William fed her that line about preserving legacy. But the woman is gone, Sergeant, and what remains is either useful or it isn't. Camilla studied him then. Something shifted in her eyes. Not surprise, calculation. She turned to Thomas. Get it done. Thomas moved. So did the ramp crew. That's when Eli reached for his side comms and tapped the emergency override. The lockdown sirens began to wail, low, brief, not meant for public panic, but unmistakable to anyone with clearance. All motion stopped. Red lights pulsed across the ceiling rafters. The hangar doors locked with a metallic clunk. Eli didn't draw a weapon, didn't bark orders. He simply stood there between jet and exit, arms behind his back, because no one else was going to draw the line. So he did. The sirens tapered off, leaving nothing but red light and confusion. Thomas stood mid-step, one hand raised, like he wasn't sure whether to proceed or protest. Camilla hadn't moved. Her expression hadn't cracked yet, but her eyes had narrowed in that way that didn't come from anger. It came from calculation. Eli tapped his comm once more and said one word: secure. Outside, the base security posts would now log Hangar 4 as locked down. No one in, no one out, unless authorized by Air Mobility Command or, more importantly, the Sovereign's heir. Camilla turned sharply. What precisely do you think this is, Sergeant? Eli's voice stayed calm. Due diligence, ma'am. You are interfering with a Royal Transport reassignment. I'm halting an undocumented override of a legacy-sealed aircraft. She stepped toward him. Do you understand whose name is on that order? Yes, ma'am, he said, but it's not the one that sealed it. That was as much as he'd give her. He turned slowly and stepped into the small service annex attached to the hangar's north side, a narrow, steel-walled office used for legacy registry access and encrypted field comms. The door shut behind him. Eli keyed in his authentication code. His pulse was steady, but something under his ribs felt wired tight. He scrolled through the secure lines until he found it. Line 8. Direct Liaison. Office of the Prince of Wales. He hesitated, just once, then tapped Connect. The encrypted ringtone clicked. Then again. A voice answered. Female, mid-30s, clipped and calm. Office of the Prince. Who's calling? Sergeant Eli Rourke, RAF Northolt, Legacy Guard. Context. Queen's BAE 146 has been entered. Civilian team dispatched for reassignment. Signatory, Queen Consort. No approval from prior chain. Silence. Then, stand by. Eli waited, eyes fixed on the blinking cursor at the corner of the console. The line didn't go dead. It shifted. A click. Then quiet. And then, Sergeant Rourke! The voice wasn't the aide's anymore. It was Prince William, lower than he remembered, tired maybe, but clear. The kind of voice that didn't ask for respect. It simply left no other option. Sir, Eli said immediately, what's the aircraft's current status? Grounded. Hangar lockdown initiated. Entry attempt by Camilla and Mr. Parker Bowles. Documentation backdated. No log change visible to prior chain. Another pause. Then William said, "I never rescinded my order." And no one else had authority to. Eli stood straighter, though no one could see him. William continued, "Do not release it. Do not engage further. I'll be there within the hour." "Yes, sir?" This conversation never happened. "Yes, sir." The line clicked, then went dark. Eli removed the headset and stepped back into the hangar. Nothing had moved. Camilla stood by the aircraft door now, murmuring to Thomas. Her eyes flicked up when she saw him return. She didn't speak. Neither did Eli. He walked past the nose wheel and took his place once more at the front of the jet. Body square, boots locked, face impassive. The air was coming. And until he did, Eli would be the wall no one breached. The silence inside the hangar didn't last. Because when someone like Camilla feels power slipping, she doesn't retreat. She doubles down. "Thomas," she called evenly, "resume preparations." He hesitated, glancing toward the hangar doors, still locked, red light still glowing. "But," he started. Camilla didn't look at him. "Now." He snapped out of it and turned, signaling the civilian movers. Two of them approached the low-loader trailer, adjusting the ramp as the mechanical arm began to lower. Eli Rourke watched without blinking. He didn't repeat himself, didn't issue a warning. He simply took 2 steps forward, placing himself directly in front of the aircraft's nose wheel, and raised his voice for the first time that day. "You don't get to polish her memory into a luxury ride." The sound hit like a shockwave, not because it was loud, but because it wasn't expected. Every technician stopped. Even the ramp's whirring slowed, as if the hydraulics themselves hesitated. Camilla turned sharply. Her heels echoed across the floor as she strode toward Eli, posture rigid, eyes narrowed into something colder than rage. "You are finished," she said. Eli didn't flinch. "Then finish me." He stepped forward, only inches between them now. "But not before you finish this jet. And what's inside it?" Camilla scoffed. "Don't posture." "There's nothing inside that matters anymore. Old briefing notes, travel logs, royal fluff." "You didn't check the cockpit." She froze, just enough to betray something. Doubt, or worse, realization. "There's a sealed envelope inside the pilot's console," Eli continued, voice sharp but steady. "Tissue wrapped, labelled in her handwriting, unopened. Untouched since the funeral flight." Camilla blinked, and for the first time, she didn't have a response ready. Thomas stepped forward, trying to laugh it off. "Probably just a letter to the next pilot or something, a keepsake." Eli turned toward him. "Then let the air decide what it is." "That's not necessary?" Camilla started, but her voice cracked mid-word. "Isn't it?" Eli asked. "Because from where I'm standing, we're one movement away from turning this into theft." She took another step forward, but he matched it, still unmoving, still square between them and the aircraft. "You talk about modernization," he said, "about breathing life into the things she left behind. But you forget. Some things don't need to move to be alive. Some things carry weight simply by standing still." Camilla's nostrils flared. "You're lecturing the Queen Consort." "I'm reminding her," he said, louder now, voice carrying across the hangar, "that you don't get to erase the last trace of the one woman who carried this family with grace, silence and service." Everyone was still. Even the tow crew stood frozen. And then, just then, there it was. The sound. Not sirens, not hydraulics, not the aircraft rebooting, but the approach of a vehicle outside, tyres crunching softly over gravel, no escort, no blue lights, just a quiet arrival that made every guard on base lift their head. Camilla turned toward the hangar door. Eli didn't move, because Prince William was here, and everything was about to change. The hangar doors parted with a low metallic groan. No escort, no clipboard-bearing aid. Just the sleek black Jaguar rolling forward until it stopped with quiet finality just beyond the threshold. The driver's door opened. Prince William stepped out. No uniform, no medals, just a dark field jacket, open at the collar, boots still flecked with dried soil. He didn't hesitate, didn't look around. He walked straight toward the aircraft. The weight of the entire hangar shifted behind him. Even the tow crew took a step back without being told. Camilla straightened immediately, her face schooling into calm. "William," she said, voice lighter than air, "I wasn't expecting you this morning." He didn't acknowledge her. Instead, he stopped in front of Sergeant Eli Rourke. Their eyes met. No salute, no nod, just mutual recognition between two men who already understood everything that didn't need saying. "Sergeant," William said. "Sir," William's voice carried, quiet but razor-sharp. "Who signed over my mother's jet?" Camilla stepped in with grace-laced urgency. "I did," she said, with the full confidence of His Majesty. William turned his head slowly to face her. "And without mine." That silenced even Thomas. William didn't argue further. He simply walked toward the aircraft stairs, moving past every pair of eyes, every held breath, and climbed into the Queen's jet. It took no more than a minute. When he returned, his hand held a sealed envelope, small, cream-coloured, the ink slightly faded, but unmistakably handwritten. Camilla stiffened. William didn't look at her. He broke the seal with care, unfolded the letter, and read it. Silently. His face didn't change, but something in his posture did. The way his shoulders settled, the way his breath slowed. Whatever was written there, he'd already known it, or suspected it. And now it was confirmed. When he finished, he refolded the paper with reverence and held it loosely in one hand. For just a moment he closed his eyes, not long, just a breath, like he was hearing her voice again. Then he looked out across the room. This aircraft, he said clearly, carried her across continents, through war zones, to hospitals, and to funerals. It carried her when no one else could. It is not a convenience. It is not a spare part. He looked at Camilla. She asked it be grounded, that it remain as it was, because the one thing she never wanted was to become a photo op. Camilla started to speak. "William, this was not meant—" He cut her off, not with words, with the quiet turn of his head. And then he looked back at Eli. "Sergeant Rourke." "Sir." "Lock it down." Eli moved. Two junior guards followed him without being told. Together they approached the stairs and retracted the boarding ramp. The sealed envelope was returned to the cockpit with gentle, gloved precision. As the aircraft doors hissed closed, William stepped back and folded his hands behind him. Camilla stood to the side, lips pressed into a fine white line. She had nothing left to say, not because she'd been defeated, but because she'd been overruled by the one voice that mattered. No orders were barked, no sirens flared. But the moment Prince William said the words, the entire air shifted. Sergeant Eli Rourke stepped forward without hesitation. Two royal guards followed wordlessly as they approached the jet. The ramp was already retracting by remote, its platform folding upward into the fuselage with slow, ceremonial grace. Eli entered the cockpit first. The Queen's envelope, now resealed by the Prince's own hand, was placed gently into the sealed archival bay beneath the captain's console. A velvet pouch, pre-issued for secure airbase artifacts, was wrapped around it before the compartment was latched shut. No tape, no wax seal. Just a printed brass tag slid into place above the hatch. Legacy asset, sealed by heir to the crown. The words didn't need embellishment. Back outside, the hangar lights flickered softly back to white. The emergency red glow faded, and for the first time all morning, the silence wasn't tense. It was respectful, final. Eli turned as the aircraft systems powered down. The cabin lights dimmed. He stepped off the boarding stairs as they retracted automatically, tucking up into the body of the plane like folded wings. At the foot of the fuselage, one of the junior guards held out a ceremonial ribbon, the kind used in static installations for decommissioned military assets. Eli accepted it and looped it gently across the stairwell latch, fixing it in place with a small metal clasp. Then he added the final piece, a new placard, simple, unpainted steel. He pressed it into the designated slot beneath the side door. Flight retired. Her Majesty's final skyborne legacy. Grounded by royal command. No ribbon cutting, no photo op, just stillness. Eli stepped back and looked at it one last time. The jet that had carried a queen through storms and fog and diplomatic fire, the one she'd refused to replace even when the ministry pushed for something newer, faster, more efficient. She'd kept this one, because it knew her, because she trusted it, because some things don't need to be modern to matter. Behind him, the civilian movers were already backing away. One man quietly powered off the tow ramp. The others gathered cables, eyes down. Thomas Parker Bowles stood with his arms crossed. His sunglasses were gone. So was the smirk. He didn't speak. Camilla remained near the far wall, hands gloved, expression unreadable. She wasn't watching the jet anymore. She was watching everyone else watching her, but no one invited her closer. Prince William remained just outside the threshold, framed by the natural light filtering through the hangar doors. He hadn't moved since returning from the cockpit. His posture was relaxed, but the line of his jaw was set like stone. He said nothing more. He didn't have to. Eli turned toward him and gave a small nod, not formal, not exaggerated, just understood. William returned it with the faintest shift of his head. Then he walked out into the light, his silhouette framed by sky and steel. The moment he disappeared, Eli looked back once more at the aircraft. No engines, no crew, no movement. And yet, the space felt occupied, like someone was still inside, like she never left. Would you have stood in front of that jet? Should legacy ever be overwritten by convenience? And did Prince William make the right call, or should he have acted sooner? Tap that like button if you believe legacy shouldn't be repainted and repurposed. Make sure you're subscribed with the bell icon turned on, so you never miss what really happens behind royal gates. Share this video with someone who still remembers the Queen's final flight. And we'll see you tomorrow, same time right here.